So we're up today, but as I mentioned, oscillating between positive and negative. And finally, the news we've been waiting for, the conditions for the next Greek bailout package seem to have been signed or at least agreed upon. Is this going to be overall good news? Can this good news be maintained in the market, or is the detail going to create problems?
Eleni, as I said previously, I think a lot of this had been discounted anyway. We've seen the markets quite powerful. If they hadn't have come to an agreement, the market would have been volatile, sold off for a couple of days. But I think the trend is there for the South African equity market. I think we go higher, regardless of good news or bad news. It just might be at a slower pace if there was some bad news coming out of Europe.
Yeah, so we're sitting at a number of around 34,300 points on the JSE. So we're going to push through. Is this what you're saying, that we could head higher and higher? Are we looking at the 40,000 level soon, Kimon?
I'm looking for at least another 5%, possibly 10% going through to the end of March. And I anticipate that the relative short positions that many of the investors find themselves in, or underweight, will help drive that market upwards. I think we've been pretty underinvested in equities as an industry over the past couple of years. And if anything, I think there were many investors towards the end of last year who were avoiding equities because of potential bad news from Europe. We took the different view where we thought that had already been factored in. So I do anticipate stronger levels. Whether it happens now over the next 2-3 weeks or the next month or so is hard to tell. But I think if one just takes a medium-term view, are we positive on the equity market?
Well, Kimon, I mean, I'm sure a lot of investors are sitting going, well, if we haven't gotten into the market thus far, now it's slightly too late. Or if we were underweight with equities, obviously we have a bit of a problem now because we're sitting at 34,000 points. Do you think that is an issue, or do you think that there is still room to move much higher for the whole of 2012? You were talking about a 5 to 10% increase by the end of March, which is obviously positive.
I think what they'll do is, that's why the downward moves we do see will be limited. So I think if there is a bit of volatility, a bit of bad news coming out from somewhere, possibly Europe or the US, wherever, those investors who are underweight will utilize those as buying opportunities. So I don't anticipate too much downside, although the market does surprise us. And overall, looking for that medium-term view of positive returns. I think we're going to make higher highs. And largely, if you just take an example, use Anglos. We think there's a lot more legs in Anglos purely because of the corporate action that we've seen with Xstrata. One has to look at the valuation of Anglos and say that's definitely a potential target for them. And I think the market recognizes that as well. So people will start climbing into individual stocks. We saw good numbers coming out of breweries. A heavyweight drives the index higher. Sasol we like as well. We know that the oil price is going back to the highs. So overall, I think the heavyweight stocks in the top 40 will help drive the index quite a lot higher.
So Anglo-American is sitting down 1.4% today, but it's sitting at 343 Rand. I know you've gone long on the stock. What is your price target on Anglo-American?
Well, our price target was 375. We got in around about 290 odd. And yeah, so that's a healthy return. And if there is speculation about some kind of corporate action, I think the market will take it there pretty rapidly. We also have quite significant technical issues that do happen towards the end of March, and that's a big futures closeout. And I think there have been a lot of derivatives traded over the past year, and that's going to be quite significant as to where the market does go. And I do anticipate some volatility in March. So for the faint-hearted, possibly stay out. But we're focusing on much higher market there where we are now.
So, I mean, Kimon, you were talking about that overall investors have perhaps been slightly underweight equities, and equities haven't really been in vogue over the last few years. And that also goes for the resource sector, because when you look at the price to earnings on the resource sector relative to what you see in industrials and the other sectors on the JSE, it seems that resources are offering quite a bit of value. When are we going to see this scenario changing? I mean, are we not convinced that things are looking better? Shouldn't we be buying into the resource story, given the fact that commodities are looking stronger as well?
That's where we are playing, and I do think purely because of the value reasons, the potential corporate action around that, and with the underlying commodities rising, I think that's really three good reasons to be in the resource sector. And a fourth reason, of course, is to be in there because it's really under-owned. So I do anticipate investors almost being forced to buy, particularly those whose job it is, or portfolio managers whose job it is to actually track the index.
Kimon, very quickly, also just looking at the banking space, we had Able out with some strong numbers, Capitec also looking quite strong. Are you dabbling within the space?
Yes, absolutely. We hold two banks in our portfolio, and we entered into those stocks towards the end of last year as well. And again, anticipate further climbs in the banking area. Again, it's an under-owned stock. I think a lot of people were avoiding it. In fact, we avoided it for 3 or 4 years. We didn't have any banking stocks in our portfolio at all. And when we thought that the market had largely anticipated much of the bad news or factored it in, that's when we felt that South African banking stocks, and I do stress South African banking stocks, were in a much better position than the internationals, and therefore we thought there'd be a nice rally there, which appears to be on the way.